Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio, where we help attorneys achieve unparalleled personal and professional success. And now here's your host, Ann Jenrette Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Esquire Coaching Radio Show. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. As you know, Esquire Coaching is a national coaching and consulting firm that's dedicated to empowering lawyers to happily succeed in the business of law. And to that end, we discuss the full range of topics from building business to getting a job to work-life balance and everything in between. Today, we have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about the business of law and the web. Let's face it, in today's ever-changing technological age, it can be overwhelming to keep up with current trends. The Internet has revolutionized the way in which we do business and communicate with one another. For lawyers, the time has never been more critical to create a web presence. Not only does advertising online increase your visibility and offer creative new ways to promote your services, but it has rapidly become the standard by which a business is judged by potential clients. By correctly utilizing the tools the Internet provides, you can quickly gain a vital advantage in this highly competitive market. Today, we will be providing an introduction to the most popular online marketing strategies, as well as helping you get started on building a web presence of your own. And joining us to help you do that is Gyi Tsakalakis. Gyi founded AttorneySync to help lawyers put their best foot forward online because that's where clients are looking. As a recovering attorney himself, Gyi is familiar with the unique considerations of effectively and ethically marketing a law practice. He regularly writes about legal web marketing for Lawyerist, Avo's I can't say the word, the Lawyeromics blog, and Attorney at Work. He also speaks on the subject, including AAJ's marketing seminar, Avo's Lawyeromics conference, and will be speaking at this year's State of Search conference on November 17th. Welcome, Gyi.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you too, because this is such an important topic, and it's something that we are always encouraging our clients to be aware of. So before we begin, I just want to remind our listeners that there will be time at the end of this show to ask Gyi any questions you have directly. Simply call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line, and I'll repeat that number again when we start the Q&A portion. All right, Gyi. So let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your journey from being a lawyer to really working on legal marketing.
Sure. So I was, as you mentioned, I was a practicing attorney for a very, very short time, only a handful of years before I switched to doing the marketing stuff. I had originally studied computer science and then decided that I wanted to do something a little different and kind of went full circle, went to law school, practiced, started at that time. The web was still, it was a lot earlier than what's going on now. This is before really social media had taken off. Still at the kind of the infancy stage of search engines. But in the last 10 years, we've really seen, and really in all industries and really for all businesses, that the web has really become, ubiquitous to what we do and how people look for businesses and services. And so it's kind of a natural transition to, it's kind of my technical background, relationships that I have with lawyers. I recognize that this is an area where lawyers really needed to update what they were doing online. And so I founded a business to do that, and that's what we've been doing now since full-time since 2008.
Oh, that's fantastic. And perfect timing, because considering what has happened, with the economy, now more than ever, it's important to have a web presence. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and it's really too. We can't control what our potential clients, how they're looking for lawyers, and so I think that no matter how people find you, whether it's word of mouth, or you meet somebody at a networking event, or you meet somebody at a community organization, however you meet them in the real world, at some point in the process of them trying to choose whether you're the right lawyer for them or if they're searching for a lawyer, they're going to turn to the internet at some stage more and more. And so, how you present yourself online matters. And there's also people who can get a lot more information. They expect to be able to get a lot more information about you. And so it's important that you are in control of that conversation to the best that you can. And, search engines and social marketing and obviously having a website are a big part of that equation.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I see a lot of law students and lawyers really resistant to the idea of a web presence. Okay, they know that they need to have a website, but they want to keep it very one and done, very static. So maybe you could talk to our listeners about why law students and lawyers should really care about the web.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that this is where people are looking for you, and so kind of speak to this idea of having the one and done or static website. That can be a good online business card. So if someone has your URL and they can type that in and get some basics about you, certainly contact information and biographic information, but more and more there's an expectation from potential clients that they're able to see what your clients have to say about you. So you see a lot of places, a lot of different sites that will allow you to have online testimonials. They'll want to see things that you publish. They want to see if you've taken leadership positions at different various legal organizations. They want to see what you know, and so and they want to see what it's like to work with you. And they can more and more they can do that by seeing the stuff that you contribute to the internet, whether it's on your own site, whether it's on a third-party site or a review site, or in the news. So all of these different places are going to make up that collage of your web presence. And again, this is where prospective clients expect to be able to find information about you.
Really excellent point. Now, what's, in your opinion, the single most important thing that you can tell law students and lawyers about the business of law and the web?
Sure. So, ultimately, when you're talking about conceptually the most important thing, I would say to be authentic and remember your obligations as a lawyer. That's the number one thing. Whether it's the web or whether it's the real world, treat your obligations and your responsibilities as a lawyer with the utmost dignity. And I think that being authentic is a big part of that. A lot of people will try to do things to, fake their, web persona. And, ultimately, even if that gets you quick wins, long term, it's just going to hurt your reputation. And your reputation's, even in the internet age, is your most valuable asset. So I'd encourage people to think about that. Beyond that, technically, certainly having a website is key. And then, participating in conversations, being, where there are conversations that are relevant to your subject matter online, engaging with the people that are having those conversations. It's just like networking offline, except now you have access to, a much broader community of people that are having those conversations.
Mm-hmm. And, we talk a lot about making sure that you're consistent with your brand. I love when you're talking about being authentic. And one thing that I see across the board is that there's many lawyers that have difficulty in letting their authentic voice come out. So everything still comes out on the web or in social media as jargony or, just very heavy with case law or something of that nature. What's your take on that with respect to business development?
Sure, that's a really good point. And, one of the big pieces in client development and marketing in general is to identify and understand your audience. And so if your audience is, if you provide local legal services to lay people, you better be able to speak to them in a way that they can understand. The same way that if a client comes in and you're going to explain to them how you're going to help them with their situation, using a bunch of jargon isn't going to help win them over because they're not going to understand you. And I think that when you think about marketing, you got to be thinking about the same type of thing. It's communicating the value of your services in a way that your audience can understand. And so, obviously, it depends on your audience. If you've got If you're talking to people that really don't understand technical jargon, then you shouldn't use that. On the other hand, if you have a much more sophisticated potential client base, then maybe you can distinguish yourself by speaking in a way that reflects that sophistication level. That might be what your audience expects. But I think ultimately the key here is to speak in a way that reflects who you are as a lawyer, how you're different. But at the same time, it's very, very important that you're doing it in a way that the potential client can understand, and that you're not speaking over their head and using the language that they would use to describe what it is that they're dealing with and how you might be able to help.
Great point. Excellent point. So what are some types of things that law students and new attorneys can do today to give themselves a leg up as they enter practice?
Sure. And so it's spending a lot of time learning about how the web works is definitely worthwhile. I think that, whether it's related to, the competency of practicing, protecting clients' interests, at the end of the day, the web is a part of a lot of people's lives. And so having that basic understanding is really, really important. Beyond that, start writing. There is a great example of law students that are blogging even while they're in law school, and that blog becomes an asset that they can use when they actually go out and start job hunting. Because just like for lawyers, they can use that as a tool to demonstrate their knowledge of their subject matter. And even though they're just getting started and they may not be as sophisticated or experienced as a lawyer that's been practicing for a long time, it's a good sense to show the investment that you're making in learning about your subject matter. And just like everything else, it allows your personality to come through. So blogging is a great vehicle for doing that. Social interaction is a great vehicle for starting to have some of those conversations. But I think if you think about the web as a complement to your learning process, and as a place to, it's a town square where you can start having these conversations about subject matter, you'll start meeting people that can be, beneficial in helping you through your career path, whether it's finding a mentor or finding an employer.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think writing is absolutely key. And one thing that we keep hearing over and over again is, this concern that, if I write a blog, it's just going out into the ether. There's so much content out on the web anyway. Who cares, essentially? What do you ever come across that with the people that you deal with? And if so, how do you address that?
Sure. So, and it's a valid point. And I think the key there is that take this out of the conversation for the web for a second. There's a lot of people in the world, period. There's a lot of people competing for the same jobs. There's a lot of voices in the real world. And so, you've got to do things that can help you stand out. And so if you're writing about topics that have been covered 50,000 times ad nauseum, it's going to be harder to stand out and distinguish yourself for those things. But if you're writing about subjects, if you're bringing your own personality and your own, opinions and your own experiences into your writing, those are the things that define you. So that they're by nature going to be unique, and they're going to help you stand out. But let's face it, writing is a tough skill, but all the more reason to start developing that earlier on. And I think another valid concern is that folks will say, well, I'm just not that good of a writer, and maybe that's a reason not to publish everything that you write online. But at the end of the day, practicing the skill of writing is very, very important. I think it's important for business development. I think you're going to find it's very important in terms of just communication and organizing thoughts as you practice. And so, there's no doubt about it. You need to write in a way that stands out. But certainly, just saying that the internet's a big place and there's a lot of blogs online, I don't think that's a reason not to participate.
Agreed. Now, you had said it's important for law students and young attorneys to start understanding the web. Do you have ideas of good resources so that they can start learning about the web, or what do you suggest they do to start approaching that learning process?
Definitely. So, the W3C schools is a great resource for just basic web stuff. So learning HTML, CSS, kind of the underlying workings of the web technologies. I think that's a great place to start. In terms of search engines, Google has a lot of really good information about how search engines work. Obviously, they're motivated to explain how, to promote people to do the types of things that they want to see in their results. But they have a lot of good documentation. There's a place called Moz.com, MOZ.com. Really great resources for marketing on the web. Those are a few of the places that I could start. I mean, honestly, if you spend enough time on Moz, you could probably learn 80% of what you need to know, and it's all free. So, you can get all the information you need there. And looking forward to, I think looking at some of the resources, some of the publications that I write for, lawyerist.com is a great one, attorneyatwork.com. As you mentioned, Avo's Lawyeronomics blog. A lot of people are putting out really good information about how to use the web in your practice. So those are some of the places that I would start. And it's all free.
Excellent. That's excellent. Excellent resources. And, I know that this is, yes, to our listeners, this does take a little bit of time and effort, and I know you might be stressed about either exams or billable hours or whatever it might be, but this is about ensuring up your future. So I really love the suggestions that you've made. Thank you for sharing those resources.
Of course.
Now, biggest mistakes that you see lawyers making online?
Sure. So really, most of them relate to, jumping headfirst in without being informed. And so you see them do, you see websites that, maybe it's not responsive, meaning that it doesn't work on a mobile device, or they bought, they know they need a website, so they go for the cheapest hosting option, but the cheapest hosting option causes their site to load slowly. So when people get to their site, they're likely to click back on their browsers because the pages aren't loading. People's attention spans are very short online. So as a general kind of observation, it really goes to not making informed choices. They end up getting sold some kind of web product or web marketing product that really doesn't fit what they're looking for, or, in the worst case scenarios, you see them doing things that could potentially get them in hot water with their state bars. So, that's why it's so important to learn enough about the web to be able to protect yourself and make informed decisions about what you're doing online. But primarily, it's things that relate to out-of-date websites or some kind of marketing campaign that's just it lacks that authenticity, and then folks wonder why the web doesn't work. Well, it's not that the web doesn't work; it's that the way that you went about executing your campaign didn't really match what your goals were.
Excellent. Now, I want to remind the listeners, if you want to ask Gyi a question, now's the time to call in. Please call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. That's 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. While we're waiting for some callers to call in, Gyi, tell us a little bit about what lawyers can do to start improving their web presence.
Sure. A couple things to start right off the bat is, and I say all of this with, especially in the United States, you've got to make sure that you're familiar with your rules of professional responsibility as they relate to advertising and as they relate to the web. Some states are much more restrictive than others, and so I think it's important to put that disclaimer out there first. But, you've got to start adding things to the web that your audience wants to see. So, again, no matter how they find you, they're going to expect to be able to find, clients speaking highly of you. They're going to expect to be able to find information about your practice. I think focusing on things like service elements. So, how are they going to be able to contact you? How can they access you? Will you be the attorney working with them, or will there be a team? Those are the types of things that clients want to know about. And I think that everything you do online, just like everything you do offline in terms of marketing, really needs to be geared towards listening to what your clients are looking for, what are their problems, what are the things that are causing them pain, and then communicating those things online in a way that answers and explains how you're going to help them solve those problems. So, obviously a website's a good place to start. A blog is a good place to start. Social interactions are a really great place to start. So social communities, obviously you've got things like Twitter, but it's finding those people, listening to what kind of things they're really looking for, and then starting to publish those types of whether it's answers to questions, whether it's encouraging clients to leave testimonials. Those are the types of things that clients want to see. And so finding ways to get that information in front of your audience, I think those are really the most important things to start with.
Through your company, what does your company do to help lawyers improve their web presence?
Sure. So there's all sorts of things we do, but really it's soup to nuts. So from building a website to hosting to AdWords campaign management to online reputation management to whether it's coaching. Some folks will just say, hey, I really like some of your ideas. Can you come up with a couple ideas that we can execute? At the other end of the spectrum, some attorneys will say, look, I don't really have time for a lot of this stuff. So what kind of support services can you offer in terms of helping me improve my visibility with whether it's some kind of awareness campaign, PR, really anything you can think of that has to do with improving a lawyer's visibility. And then ultimately, I think this is even the more important piece, is to actually report and measure the effectiveness of what we're doing. So we do things like phone call tracking and form fill tracking. We connect that with Google Analytics. And by doing that, you can actually see which advertising and marketing channels you're getting business from. So, in an ideal world, you've got some kind of practice management tool that you can actually attach, your fees to, and we can tie that all the way back to the specific marketing channel, whether that's organic search, whether that's an AdWords campaign, or whether that's, some kind of social media advertising or something like that. But you can actually see now, and you can calculate your return on advertising spend. And now you're not guessing, you're not throwing money into a black hole. You're actually being able to measure and analyze your efforts and see what's working, do more of that, and do less of what's not.
Oh, that's good and useful to know that you work so comprehensively with lawyers. Now, one of the things that you just talked about was a lot about advertising, and we keep hearing from clients, across the U.S., just this reluctance to advertise. I think everybody's thinking more of those old Jacoby and Myers types of commercials from back in the day or something. But
right.
Talk to us a little bit about your take on, why advertising is important for attorneys.
Right. So, again, the devil's in the details, as they say, and the execution matters. So, just like everything else, advertising is a way, is basically paying for attention online. And so doing it in a way that, again, still meet those criteria, being authentic, communicating the value of your services, communicating to your audience in a way that they can understand how you help them, are still important for advertising. But there's all sorts of different ways to advertise. And, it depends a lot on the type of practice that you have. But I can tell you that, in a lot of, especially when you're talking about search, if you're talking about a competitive marketplace, a competitive practice area, a competitive location, you're going to find that, organic search it can be a great thing, but it's a longer term play. If you want visibility today, then, you're paying for it is going to be a faster response. And again, the nice thing is that you can measure it. And so in the past, when you talked about whether it's television, radio, or banner, or billboards and that kind of stuff, unless you had sophisticated tracking phone numbers and that kind of thing, you really didn't know, and you were doing more of an awareness type of campaign so that, you're trying to stay top of mind and really saturating your market. But especially with search advertising, you can bid on the very specific keywords that are relevant to your practice. You can put negatives in for keywords that, you want to avoid. You can control and test your ad copy. You can control and test your landing page experience. So you can really hone in on people that fit a particular, legal services consumer persona. And then in that way, and again, you can measure everything. So you can actually see, hey, these keywords with this ad copy and this landing page is generating cases for me. And again, you can do this in a way that still meets with your brand. It still meets with the authenticity that you want to portray, still meets your personality. It doesn't have to be, the Saul Goodman exploding cars type of advertising. There's a lot of ways that lawyers can, still position themselves in a professional way and advertise in a completely authentic and ethical way as well.
That's excellent. This has been so useful to hear all these tips that you're providing. Tell our listeners how they can find you if they have any questions that they'd like to, ask personally.
Sure. So lucky for me, I have a very unique name, so they can just search GYI and pretty much anything with marketing or search marketing or SEO. I usually come up. But otherwise, they can go to our company's website. It's AttorneySync. That's AttorneySync.com. They can go to Lawyerist, that's lawyer with IST.com. They can go to Avo's Lawyeronomics blog, as you mentioned, and Attorney at Work, and my contact information. You can see things that I've written there and obviously comment on those posts, and my contact information is pretty much all over the place there. So search my name, and I think that'll be your best bet. Otherwise, you can certainly email me directly at gt@attorneysync.com as well.
Excellent resource. So, one final thought from you. What's one last piece of advice or just something that you'd like our listeners to leave with?
Yeah, I think that going back to that point of authenticity and that the web isn't going anywhere. I think that a lot of people still, as you mentioned with the advertising, there's a reluctance, whether it's a time issue that they're just so busy, or they're not convinced that their types of clients are actually using the internet. The truth is that really most people are at some point in the process going to use the internet to find information about you, and so it's really not an option anymore. The same way that knowing how a telephone works isn't really an option. The web is a new communications technology. It's going to affect your practice. It's affecting pretty much every industry you can think of, and so it's still a good time to start learning. You don't have to commit weeks and months of buying books and that kind of thing. The information is available online, but getting those basics down will really help you. And again, this is where your clients are looking. So if you want to grow your practice, it's a really good opportunity to get in front of the right audience at the right time.
Fantastic. This has been such an informative interview. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And listeners, let's keep this conversation going. Since we're talking about the web and since we're talking about web presence, join us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Share some of your concerns or some of the questions you have and some of the things that you've done to improve your own web presence. You can find all of our links right on our website, www.esquirecoaching.com. And next week, we'll be speaking with Mary Smith in honor of talk to us about what some of the Native American attorneys are dealing with and some new programs that they're working with. Until then, everyone, be well.